What's going on, everybody? TripleCrown24 back today with a new episode of the Sports Card Psychology Podcast, where we go inside the mind of the hobby. Welcome if it's your first time listening. Welcome back if it's not your first time listening. And kudos if you've returned to the show after a very lengthy absence on my part. I feel re energized, ready to go, and start putting these out again on a weekly basis. I've been asked about this podcast many times over the last year or so about bringing it back. And I feel that today it is the day to get back on the horse to repackage this product, if you will. And that leads us into today's subject matter, which is the rise of the repack. Perhaps one of the most talked about aspects of the hobby, for better or for worse, here in 2024. And really, today I want to answer, why are these things so dang popular? Why are there so many repackers out there and people joining into these repacks? Because, well, they wouldn't exist if people didn't buy into them. And we're going to break it down today. We're going to talk about how the repacks started, how they've evolved over time, and of course, we got to look ahead to the future, figure out how they are going to look later on down the line. Shall we start at the beginning of the origin of the repacks? Well, when I first think of a repack, I go back to my childhood. Growing up in Michigan, one of the places that I would go to on the weekends a couple of times a year would be the Gibraltar Trade Center. And any of my fellow Detroiters out there will definitely remember the large indoor flea market that was Gibraltar. I'd go with my dad, and naturally, as a sports card nut as I was back then, still hasn't changed to this day, I would go to the card vendors. A lot of times they'd have sports memorabilia as well, but a lot of the ones that had cards would also have repacks. I remember one where they would have these brown paper bags, kind of like the ones you see on your screen if you're watching on YouTube in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, where it looks very similar to that. It's a brown paper lunch bag that is taped up. It has usually the team that the repack is oriented towards or the sport. And I remember the ones there would be $5 with this one particular vendor, and you were guaranteed a hit in every pack. And that would be an autograph card or a memorabilia card. Ideally, you get the autograph, right? But the memorabilia card is usually what you end up with. It's not as bad if you got your favorite player on a different team, or perhaps you got a Tigers player. That softened the blow a little bit if you didn't get the autograph, which was the big cheese back then. But those are some of my earliest memories as well. I've also opened at least one of the two products that you see on the top left-hand portion of your screen, again, if you're watching on YouTube. And these are products that are put out by a company named Fairfield, probably one of the oldest names in the repack game. What they do is they buy up old packs that don't sell right away at retail, and also old collections of common cards to create these Frankenstein blaster boxes almost, where you're going to get X number of cards from a certain sport or X number of packs from a certain sport. Usually the pack on the front or the card on the front is going to be of a player or product that is more appealing as a way to kind of hook you in to buy the repack. There's also eBay repacks that are very notorious for many different reasons. We don't have to get into that, but they've been around for long times. I'm talking about probably since you could start selling cards on eBay way back in the day. And through that, you start to see companies emerge that are primarily focused, if not solely focused, around repackaged products. One of the earliest ones that I can recall is Super Break, and they're still going to this day. Perhaps the most popular one in today's hobby landscape that has been around for quite some time is Hit Parade. You've also seen card manufacturers such as Leaf themselves. They have gotten in on the repack game with their products such as their Best of Sports, or certain products that have a theme to them, such as a Gem Mint product where you get 10 PSA 10 or BGS 9.5 graded cards in your box. So these companies that are dedicated to repacks start to emerge, and now through that you see breakers creating their own repack products. A lot of these breakers stream through selling platforms such as Whatnot, Loop, these interactive live platforms There's also repacks on social media. You choose your favorite social media site. I'm sure there's a repack on it. Various large time breakers have their own repack products that have their own nickname to it. An example, Leighton Sports Cards has a almanac product. They don't run it all the time, but it's kind of a special occasion thing where it's their own repack product, and the level of buy-in ranges from anywhere from a couple $100 to a four-figure buy-in at times to get involved in these repacks. Some breakers will use their repacks in mixer breaks, which is a combination of different products for a group break, and they'll use their repacks as kind of a chaser card to make sure that you're at least getting a couple of big hits if you can't hit anything good out of the packs. More on that here in a minute. Without a doubt, though, repacks are everywhere. And you've probably had some kind of interaction with them one way or another. I'm not saying you've necessarily joined one, but you probably know someone who's joined one or seen something about them on your timeline, wherever it may be on social media. Now, one of the big comparisons today is repacks versus breaks. Ultimately, I won't sugarcoat it, they're both forms of gambling. There's not really a way around it. You're buying into something you don't know what you're going to get out of them, right? It's gambling. Now, is it different than, say, sports betting or betting on horses or going to the casino and playing table games or slot machines? Yeah, it's a different form. There's different regulations for it. In fact, there's not as many regulations for it, which is one of the hottest points against it. Again, different discussion for a different day, but there's fewer restrictions. In my opinion, it's more accessible out there, and people love to gamble. There's a lot of gambling that happens in the hobby, and people sometimes choose to gamble through prospecting the next big thing in baseball or the top quarterback coming out of the draft class this year in the NFL. Some people prefer to do it through opening up product of their own, whether it be sealed boxes or sealed cases. And some people prefer to do it through going through a group break where you can pick your own team, where you can get assigned a random team in a break. You can get a random serial number. You can get a random player. You can get a letter of the alphabet. There are all sorts of different types of breaks out there. But these two forms of gambling are both very prevalent in the hobby. And I've got some news for you. They're not going anywhere anytime soon. But if you have to choose between the two, which one are you going to pick? And oftentimes, someone who joins repacks also joins breaks and vice versa. But I see more and more people gravitating more towards these repacks. And because of that, I want to see what is the appeal of both sides here. Why would people want to get in on these? And also, I want to see what would deter people from getting in on these. And we're going to start with what I would call the challenger here, repacks, since I think breaks are the currently more prominent of the two, but repacks have kind of started to take over. What are we looking for here? Well, in both cases, there is what we like to call ROI. Now, when you're putting money into a repack or a break, you're expecting to get something out of it, right? That's the whole reason that you would put in there. You're not joining a repack or a break and saying, well, here's $50. Nope, you just keep it. Go ahead. I'm good to go. No, you want to get something back on it. So your ROI, there's really two things that go into your ROI. The first one is going to be the fun or the satisfaction that you get out of participating in this. Perhaps it's a level of dopamine that hits when you hit it big in a break, or you win big on the repack and hit one of the chaser cards. And then your other ROI is what value did you get out of it? And this one is perhaps what people are more concerned with is, say, I'm going to put $50 into this break or repack. How much am I going to get in return in terms of the value of the cards? If we look at a repack, your ROI has a more defined set of parameters, I would say. Whereas a break, you could get absolutely nothing, or you could hit the biggest card in the product if it is still there and you have the right team, of course. Whereas in a repack, you're going to see three terms that are very closely associated with almost every repack, largely because of the guidelines of the selling platforms have required people to put this in there, where you have a floor, a ceiling, and an average. What do these mean? Well, a floor is going to be what is the minimum value you're going to get out of your repack. Say that my floor is $50 on my repack. All right, I'm guaranteed to get at least get one $50 card or cards that would total up to $50 in there. The ceiling, that's going to be your chaser cards, right? I have this Joe Burrow autograph that's worth $2,500. That's the best card in the repack that you can hit. So my ceiling, this $2,500 Joe Burrow card. Your average, basically what it says. It's the average of all the values of the packs put together. How much value are you going to get out of the average pack? Now, this time it can be a little deceptive because you might think that like every pack on average is worth, let's say, 150, $200. But again, if you have a card such as that Burrow, for example, where we'll say the average of our repack is $200 and that $2,500 Burrow is in there, statistically, that card's value is an outlier. We would, in most data sets, eliminate that from the data set to find the true average in there. So that one card is going to really skew the data. And the fewer cards that are in there, the more that data is going to be skewed, right? If you have a repack with an average of $200 and there's only 10 different cards in there with that Burrow, the Burrow is going to hold more weight than, say, there's 100 cards or 100 packs in the repack. Regardless, though, you're going to get something, right? Every pack has something in it. If you have a repacker that has empty packs, it's time to find a new repacker. Let me at least tell you that. Or at least they're not going to be around for very long. And because of that, you have a higher expected value where when you join a break, you are not guaranteed anything. Now, most breakers will give you something. They're going to throw you a bone if you get skunked or you go hitless, but that's more of a consolation. Thanks for playing prize. It's probably not anything to get really excited about. Generally speaking, though, are you going to take a loss on these repacks? Probably more often than not, but the level of loss or the percentage of loss that you have from your initial buy-in is going to be less than a break most of the time. Now, on the downside, we talk about all these values, right? Your average, your low, your high. Those are extremely effective if they are done correctly. And that is where you have to trust in whoever is organizing these repacks. If they are comping their cards wrong and they're taking only the highest sale of cards or being very selective in what they choose to value a certain card at, every time that they overvalue something, it's going to devalue those three numbers: your floor, your ceiling, your average. And because of that, your ROI might be less and less depending on how much that is. And generally speaking, you'll get a good feel for this as it goes on. Where if someone says that their big chaser is a $2,000 card and, well, realistically it's more like 750, then it might be a repacker you want to avoid. I'm just throwing it out there. But unfortunately, it does happen where people overvalue their cards. There have been some efforts put in place where certain platforms want you to be able to show basically a completed sale for a certain card to prove its value out there. I know a lot of repackers that I know will only buy cards if there is a sale out there so that they have something to base it off of, which I think is beneficial for the buyer. At least they have one sale as a point of reference. Now, how realistic is that one sale? You guys know my thoughts on that and my thoughts on comps in general, but this is not a comps podcast. We'll we'll have plenty of more comps episodes in the future. Don't you worry. On top of that, you're a little bit more stifled in your ability to choose what you want. You can't customize it as much. I know repacks that are multi-sport. So say that I like baseball. Well, here's this Lionel Messi card. Oh, you don't like soccer? Well, sorry, there's not really any control over that. You can control what type of sport you get into. Like, oh, here's a baseball only repack. I'll join that. But say that I'm only after Tigers cards. Well, there's really no way for me to specifically target Tigers cards, whereas in a break, I can try to trade for the Tigers in a random team break, or I can purchase them outright in a pick your team break. That kind of curates my breaking experience to make sure that what I'm getting out of the break is cards that are of interest to me. And then on top of that, your expected value is going to be limited. You're not going to get the product hit in a huge product like NT or Prism. The best you can do is whatever that top card is in the repack, meaning that there is a hard ceiling on your repack ROI. On the other hand, with box breaks, that expected EV really has no limit. If you have the Texans in a break and say that you don't know that the CJ Stroud 101 black has been pulled, which I'm pretty sure it has been, then hey, sky's the limit. You could get a 5-figure card in there. You really don't know what is going to come out. I mean, there is a checklist out there, of course, but some of these cards, you don't know what they could be worth. Really, sky's the limit with it. And on top of that, you're going to get more cards. Most repacks, it's one card and done, pretty short and sweet. If you open up your own box, you're getting all the cards for that box. If you pick your team in a break, you're getting all the cards for that team in the break. And it's more personalized that way. You can choose which products you interact with. You can choose which teams you get. You can choose which break format you participate in. There's a lot more flexibility. Whereas a repack, you're buying the pack and you get what you get. Don't throw a fit, right? Now, on the downside, there is the possibility that you get skunked. Again, if you're buying into repacks and they have empty packs in there, find a new repacker. I'm telling you, that is not normal. I've never personally seen it, but hey, I wouldn't be surprised. I've seen a lot of crazy things this year. However, in breaks, there is no guarantee. Now, as I mentioned earlier, breakers will usually throw you a bone, toss you a few extras if you don't get anything, but some of them won't. Even if you get one base card, some of them will say, yep, you got something. There you go. Go on about your business. We're on to the next break. So you might get nothing for however much you put in. There is really no guarantees in a break. On top of that as well, when you buy into a repack, oftentimes the way that people will do it is you'll know how many chasers are left, and they'll usually randomize those chasers, meaning that someone can't pull the best card in the first 5 packs in theory, or at least that card will still be in play until all of the chaser spots are gone. Whereas in a break, say that, again, I want to go for the Texans and Prism. I want the CJ Stroud Black Finite. Well, if it's already pulled, I don't have access to it. Say that all 10 of the golds were pulled. Don't have access to those. And then on top of that, I might not even be able to access getting the Texans in the break. If it's a random team break, I have to hope that someone trades with me. Good luck with that. Or I get random them, or I can buy them from that person again. Good luck with that if the breaker will even allow them to sell their spots to someone. On top of that, you have pick your team breaks, where with some of the really large breakers out there, a lot of those really big teams are gone in seconds. You will never have a chance to get them. Or sometimes some breakers will hold back certain teams either for themselves or for big time customers. It happens. I've seen it happen. And because of that, you might never even have a chance to get the Texans in the break. If you do, it's probably going to be with a smaller, less reputable breaker who isn't getting the product as cheap, and therefore you're going to pay the king's ransom for it. And on top of all of that, there's lower quality control, which is kind of weird to say that the repacks actually have better quality control, in my opinion, than the products. Say that you do hit that big CJ Stroud, and it's got the Panini Surface thumbnail indent on it. Well, that's great. Or my big card is chipped up all over the edges. Well, that's lovely. And perhaps I can get it replaced. Perhaps I can get some kind of credit or whatever. But I got to go through all that process. I don't want to have to go through that, right? This is supposed to be for fun, for entertainment, for enjoyment. I don't want to have to deal with all that. So that's kind of your pros and cons for boxes and repacks. Which one are we going to choose here? Well, a lot of people have started to gravitate towards the repacks over the breaks, given all of this. It's time to answer why that is. Again, these are both forms of gambling. And what we really need to dive into is why are people gambling on cards and these forms of interacting with sports cards? What is the appeal? And we have to understand the mind of a gambler. There's a few different things. We want to be able to win, right? I want to hit it big. I want to hit the CJ Stroud Gold Prism. I want to hit the 1-of-1 super fractor of insert name a top 16-year-old Bowman prospect hitter, first Bowman card here. I want to get that card. Or I want to hit the chaser in the repack. I want to get one of the big cards. I want to get that main chaser. It's a really common thing in people who have competitive personalities. I myself have a competitive personality. I like to win in everything that I do. And because of that, I know that, and I have to exhibit a lot more self control because it can lead to you wanting to participate more and more, and that can be dangerous. Part of it's a social aspect. And in preparation for this video, you know what I did last night? I joined a repack. Now, it wasn't too expensive. I think I bought 2 packs total, and if I look at my bill, it was about 130, $135, I think, between the 2 packs, which that was the price of the average. So I felt pretty good getting 2 packs for the price of one average pack. But looking in there, there was almost like this little community going on where people knew each other. People knew each other's names. They knew each other's habits, like, oh, this is my lucky number. I always pick this pack. Or, oh, this number has been really hot lately. There was this little repack subculture going on, and there was a lot of social element to it. And I think that plays into the entertainment. Overall, it's a show, right? And the host of this particular show, I thought, did a good job of getting people to understand, like, okay, there hasn't been a chaser hit in a while. We're due for one. Or, all right, we've hit a lot of chasers. We're on fire right now. These are going fast right now. These big cards are still out there in the packs. Really keeping people engaged throughout, which for a multi-hour process of going through the repacks can be difficult to do, especially in this day and age where attention spans, well, the repacks are nice because it's kind of quick and over with easy for those with short attention spans. But to keep the audience captivated and wanting to see more and potentially buy more repacks, I think it takes a very specific skill set and salesperson to be able to do that. And this particular person who did it, I thought they did a great job with it. So those are some of the things that we're looking to get out of there. In addition to the value of our cards, it's the idea of winning or plussing on whatever we put into the break or the repack. It's the community aspect of it. And it's also having fun. This is supposed to be an escape, a release, something that we use our discretionary income on, which is what a lot of the appeal is. Now, with that form of gambling, a lot of people out there, if they're going to take a risk, it's going to be a calculated risk, right? And there's a few things that have tilted the scales more and more in the favor of the manufacturers. They say that the house always wins, and you know what? To some extent, that is true. The card manufacturers, they are profiting regardless of what you hit in your box. The repackers, I would probably guess that they're profiting sometimes handsomely, regardless of what you hit in your repack, whether you get the floor or the top chaser. However, the rise in sealed wax prices have forced a lot of people into this term of being priced out, where back in the day, I kind of sound like an old man here, but back in the day, let's say even a decade ago, National Treasures football, $600 would be a really high-end release. That would signal a really good rookie class, a really deep rookie class with a lot to look forward to. $400 would be something like you have in 2013, where you don't have a lot of really good big name rookie quarterbacks. $400 to $600 a box. Now the box price is what you used to get cases for, if not even more, in a product like NT. Same thing with contenders, another really popular product in football. $100 to $150 would come out around the new year every single year. Now $450 plus, sometimes probably even up to $600 if the rookie class is really good. And it's like that for all products. It's not just even the quote unquote group break oriented products like a dynasty baseball or a transcendent baseball or a national treasures football. It's stuff that used to just be really designed towards collectors and really designed towards people who want to open up a box for fun, such as Stadium Club baseball, Phoenix football, Hoops basketball. I see it with all of these products. Now, you even have Breakers Delight products, which are specifically geared towards breakers to make it easier on them and kind of compact the experience in there. I'll move myself over here, but we have lower expected value and excuse me, return on investment as a result of this. It's kind of inflation for sealed wax, right? You're paying more to get less, especially when you consider that thing in baseball where we more so get product odds. The pull rates on the better cards keep getting more and more difficult, it seems, and there's more and more different parallels out there to make them even more challenging. And then in sports like basketball and football, some of the top rookie autographs don't even exist. There is no CJ Stroud autographs. There are no Bryce Young autographs. There are no Victor Wembanyama autographs. And I don't know if that's going to change really anytime soon. I think you're going to see that more and more and more. And that's kind of scary to think that really you're paying more and more for the boxes, subsequently more and more for the breaks. And you can't even access what would be the top hits in past years because, well, they don't exist. And on the repack side of things, the people who have hosted the repackers on their platforms, such as Whatnot, and the repackers themselves have governed themselves more and more. There really isn't much government regulation on repacks, right? I wouldn't be surprised one day if there was something um, more towards organized grab bags out there, but that's a topic for a different day. But you see on a smaller scale, such as the grab bag policies and whatnot, where things need to be very clearly laid out. You need to show all of the packs on the screen. You need to show what the ceiling, average, and floor are for your packs. You need to show people what they can expect to get in the packs. You need to have examples of cards that have been hit in previous packs. You got to be ready to have that. And if you don't have that, you can get in trouble. You might get suspended. You might get a warning. You might even get deplatformed. It just kind of depends on the seriousness of the infraction. And meanwhile, while the experience on that side has been more and more oriented towards the consumer, it's been less and less on the side of the manufacturers themselves. People are upset that the redemptions aren't getting filled in time. People are upset that the cards are coming out of the pack damaged, and then when they go to replace it, it's this really long, drawn out process that has mixed results. Really depends on the card and the popularity of the card. And then the product sometimes can even be a difficulty to get a hold of, which sounds bizarre in a world where the product is being produced at very high volumes, but a lot of it is going to these large breakers where you want to get in it. Well, you got to go to these sources and very specific sources out there of people who move very large volumes of product. Where is this going to lead us in the future? Well, people want to be able to get the most bang for their buck getting into this. And I'll tell you right now, as I mentioned earlier, these are not going anywhere. There are no repackers that are just going to get up and vanish tomorrow. That are some of the big names out there. Breaks have been around for the better part of a decade and a half. All the breakers are not going to shut down tomorrow. There's not going to be outlawing of breaks or repacks. If they're outlawed on one place, they'll move to another. It's one of those things where you've kind of taken the toothpaste out of the tube rather, and you can't put it back in. All we can do is kind of evolve it and see where it goes. And naturally, these types of things might be phased out. People may lose interest in breaks like they already have been, or opening sealed product, or even joining these repacks. And ultimately, it's going to come down to the next step in their product life cycle. What you're going to probably see is more changes in policy. I bet you see more and more regulations to help these streaming platforms such as Whatnot, Loop, whatever the case may be, to kind of cover their own behinds in the case of some bad actors in the repack games. I think you're going to see more and more guidelines from the repackers themselves that will police themselves because they want to have the best, the most honest, the most fair repacks out there. And with a large number of competitors out there, they have all the incentive to try to attract people to their specific repacks. because with so many alternatives, the bad ones, they're going to get weeded out very quickly just due to the insane levels of competition out there. I bet you also see some more card manufacturers dipping their toes into the market. We saw this exact same type of practice happen with sealed wax when people were buying all the blasters off the shelves. People are waiting outside of Target to buy up all the blasters every single week for the restock. What happened eventually? Blasters went up $10, $20, depending on the product. Manufacturers start selling more and more cases to hobby stores or distributors. They're not necessarily making it out to the retail shelves. They're keeping more of that money in house rather than other people profiting off of their products. If I was a betting man and I wasn't betting on a repack or a break, I'd probably put my money on more and more card manufacturers trying to keep it in house. Fanatics, they like to get their toes into a lot of things. Would not surprise me in the slightest if they start picking off some of these repackers, that they start buying back Topps cards or whatever cards that they might want to buy back to create their own repack products and to compete and to bring that market share back to them. Because when people are making profits off of their products, they're going to want their cut of it too. And it can only go on for so long and get so big before the heavyweights kind of put their foot down and take their share of the pie. I would not be surprised to see that happen within the next few years. And then you're also going to have to see a response from the repackers themselves once that happens. They're not going to go quietly, right? Once they have built these little empires for themselves, they're not just going to give it up, and they'll have to find ways to evolve. It will be a cat and mouse game. But again, these are not going anywhere. Like them or hate them, well, however you may feel about a repack, you don't have to join them. You don't even have to acknowledge them. But just know that they're going to be there. And a lot of people are going to get involved with them. Now, on the break side of things, do I think that breaks will go away again? I don't. But I do think that you're going to see more and more people going towards these repacks to a point where things will have to change. If the demand for group break products gets low enough, you will probably see cuts in production or cuts in price. To me, most of the time when something goes up, it typically doesn't go back down for products like this. I don't know if wax prices will ever return to pre-COVID levels. I thought they would, but it's been long enough now where I really have my doubts about that. Could I see production numbers possibly being cut to keep in line with current market demand? I definitely could see that. Again, the breaking's not going anywhere and there will still be big time breakers, but I think those costs might have to be cut back because those breakers will gravitate towards repacks as well if they can be more profitable. You have to keep in mind that a lot of breakers out there, if they don't have a direct allocation or a direct account with these manufacturers, it makes acquiring the product at a price that they can then sell it to their consumers very difficult. Every time you add a middleman, the margins for each middleman get smaller and smaller and smaller, which is the huge advantages of being direct. And when that happens, people will just go to where they can get the best deal on the team or box that they want to open. There's not a lot of loyalty out there. It's about getting the most bang for your buck a lot of times, unfortunately. And for better or for worse, that is what the consumer wants. And because of that, if the repacks then become more profitable, what you'll probably see is a very small group of organized breakers that are more so controlled by the manufacturers. And then the repackers, again, you'll have a very small group of them, but you'll see more small time repackers out there. That is, if there are enough cards to go around, which is one of the problems that a lot of repackers will tell you they've experienced at shows where they have a difficulty competing against their fellow colleagues to source the inventory they need, especially if they're doing it weekly and they need a few hundred cards that are worth $100 to $500. There's only so many of those out there, especially as the market continues to correct itself and we as a hobby really define what things are valued at. So there's plenty to go along, plenty to look forward to, and a lot of interesting ways that this could play out. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are in the comments down on YouTube or reach out to me on any of my social medias. Link is in the show notes on whatever podcast platform you may be listening on or in the description of the YouTube video. Thank you so much for watching today. Take care, stay safe, be kind.